Hello, guys. Today I wanted to have a chat about the recent election in Ontario, the recent provincial election that occurred on June 7th, which was on a Thursday, and see if we can analyze it from a libertarian perspective, especially from the Ontario Libertarian Party that managed to get a full slate of candidates, from what I understand, and try and analyze it and see if we can come to any conclusions or any directions about how libertarians might want to proceed going forward. Uh, so let's just start out with kind of like the general mood around the election. So as of late, when I started getting political, I would pay attention to sort of the minute details of like political parties and whatnot. In the last like 1 or 2 years, I've really kind of tuned out of it, because after you do it for a few years, paying attention to politics, you realize it's a lot of the same, right? It's just a one big cycle that keeps happening. So it is just not very interesting to me, and trying to sort of persuade people from a political level also seems like a very, if not impossible, then very difficult enterprise. So lately I've switched a lot of my reading and efforts towards looking more at psychology and everything, which is why I've actually liked Jordan Peterson a lot, and I'm really following him more than anything else, instead of like something like the Mises Center and whatnot. But anyway, we'll probably do a video on some of the details on that and another topic. But for now, so for this election, I just kind of read headlines, and the only really article I read on it was one from Andrew Coyne from the National Post here that he wrote a few days before, and he came kind of like to the same conclusion that I came to, and a lot of other people, which was, hey man, there's really nobody to vote for in this election out of the big three parties that are the NDP, Liberal, and conservative. I guess there may be progressive conservatives. I don't even know that. I think they're progressive conservatives in Ontario. But anyway, yeah. So like the idea is like the Liberals were pretty much going to go down the same path. Yeah, we'll just get the government more involved in your lives, come up with bigger programs, whatnot, and that will fix the economy and everything else. The NDP was, of course, like, you're not doing enough. You're not getting involved in the economy enough. So that's the NDP approach, and the conservative approach in this election by Doug Ford, I guess, was kind of like, hey, we're just gonna cut away some spending, encourage businesses a little bit more, especially cut taxes, and that will be the solution to everything. And of course, Doug Ford, people are comparing him, I guess, and I think it's fair, a little bit to the Trump campaign, and that I get the same feeling that he's not very specific on anything. He just talks and then just doesn't give any specifics, which is kind of like with the Trump thing when he talks about like trade wars or trade policies, like America's getting a bad deal on trade and la la la, and then we're getting screwed over and whatnot, and then I'm just sitting there like, go on. Are you going to give any details of what you're going to do in specific? How much tariffs? How how China's screwing you over? Are you going to give any more details? And of course, he never does. So it's politics, if anything, is becoming more and more ridiculous. That it's all about catchphrases and everything else. No real specifics. No real meat to anything. So anyway, so that was the general mood for this election. So. Going forward, prior to the election, I'm always optimistic. I'm always hoping that like libertarians or a libertarian party is gonna be their moment to finally shine and give people a real alternative. But if we're being honest here, this was a disappointing election for the Libertarian Party of Ontario, at least from my end anyway, the way I look at it. Other people might be more positive, but like I said, there was definitely a big opportunity to differentiate themselves and give people a real alternative option to anybody that's looking for smaller government, but for one reason or another it just didn't come through. So let's look at another image here to look at some of the numbers more specifically. So I pulled this image from Election Ontario, and so the very first thing we can look at here is the Libertarian Party came in fifth with a total vote count of 42,918. Now, 4 years ago, which I believe 2014 was the last provincial election in Ontario, the total vote count for the Libertarian Party was 38,954. So in 4 years, the increase has been in votes by 3,962, which is a little bit above 10%. So I mean, it went up, it didn't go down. So that's something to be optimistic about. But then again, if we're being really realistic here about trying to have an impact politically, it's got to go up a lot higher than that. Especially like I said, like the idea, at least for me, was like when I started looking into this, like in around 2010, was that as things keep getting worse, it should be easier to sell libertarianism. But I mean, if we're being honest, it's just not having the breakthrough that's hoped. Like ever since Ron Paul kind of ended his 2012 presidential run, nobody's been able to copy his type of success. So like even his son Rand Paul in the last U.S. presidential election just wasn't able to get anything going. So looking more into the numbers, voter total percentage of the vote, it was 0.75%, so less than 1%. And 4 years ago for the Libertarian Party, it was 0.81, so that is down 0.6%. And it's down 0.6% despite more people voting Libertarian, because the voter turnout jumped up from 51% to 58%, which kind of also gives a big hint to what type of election this was. So this was an election where people really wanted to get the Liberals and Kathleen Wynne out of government. There was a lot of anger, a lot of resentment towards what she's done in Ontario. So it all became about getting her out no matter what. Huge unpopular leader. So she definitely should have stepped down before running in this election, but to really save her party, to really save her reputation also, because now she's gonna forever be branded with a big label on her forehead, loser, right here. So even for herself, she should have done herself a favor. But of course, a lot of these politicians, especially more social minded, the hubris with them to think that they can run an economy as vast as Ontario. Of course they're going to believe that they can win no matter what, no matter how unpopular they are. They're always going to delude themselves. But anyway, so that's that for her. So the voter turnout increased because people really wanted to get her out. And so the Libertarian Party could not I guess, go to people and convince enough people to say, hey, you need to vote for us to really improve the state of Ontario. I mean, people are stuck with the idea of voting for the lesser of the evils there to try and push change, which I guess came across as the Conservative Party, right? So I had the feeling that that's what was happening, and I couldn't get a screenshot of it, but on the Andrew Coyne article, I posted a comment there, which was, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't look at it anymore because I went past over my 10 free viewing articles, and so I can't view any more National Post articles for this month anyway. So in there I posted, so if you're a small government conservative, who do you vote for in this election? Do you just stay home and not bother to vote? And surprisingly, I got quite a few comments. I got like 6 or 7 comments on that little comment I posted, and all of them were like, look man, like the general tone was like, look, Doug Ford, the Conservatives, I mean, it's not a great party, it's not a great alternative, but the NDP and Liberals are worse. They would do worse. So the idea, and this was parroted by more than one person, that the Conservatives have no real ideology, but at least, if we vote them in, then once they're voted in, we can hopefully convince some people as to small government values. And only one guy on the comment was like, hey, there's the Libertarian Party out there. And then I tried to check out his profile. He wasn't involved with the Libertarian Party of Ontario, so he was literally just like one of those voters that's just like had enough. So that was like 1 out of like 6, right? So I don't have a solution to this. This is something that obviously needs to be debated, and we need to do a lot of thinking of. But how to get people to stop thinking of this mentality that they can only vote for the big parties and keeps voting for the smaller evil, and then from there you'll get true change, right? Because people are still got the idea that if you vote for the Libertarians, even though they might have like good policies and whatnot, it's a wasted vote. And then I think Libertarians try and convince them, no, it's not a wasted vote, blah, blah. Where I think we should just be like, yeah, it is a wasted vote. But so is a wasted vote voting for the Conservatives, when all they're going to do is they're still going to increase the size of government. They're just not going to increase it as fast as the other guys. And, you know, I think the only time where you could have proven that, like, maybe it's the lesser of evils was with Stephen Harper, who finally managed to balance the budget. But even there, I think if we looked at it, government was increasing, especially in certain areas. So even then, it's a tough call. But anyway, that's something for us to think about and debate going forward. So strategies going forward. Let's see. Okay, like if you wanna, you know, I mean, I tell people I'm a libertarian if I'm chatting with someone, just because we need labels to, so that we don't spend half an hour like describing all our various positions before we start getting to something. But realistically, like I'm more of an individualist in the Libertarian Party and whatnot. I don't want to. It's a lot of work. It seems like a lot of work for the benefit that you get, right? And then you get the party, and then you gotta kind of watch out that nobody says anything stupid, and you gotta watch your members, you know, that they don't go off message and whatnot. And then you gotta make sure that they're real libertarians, and you know, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of things. And I don't want to have to apologize for anybody, right? I'm an individual, and that's what libertarianism is, really. So I have a lot of doubts about getting politically active, but if we are going to be politically active, the next thing to look at is the federal election, which will be, I guess, in 2 years' time, supposedly. So looking federally, the last time the Federal Libertarian Party ran, it had, and I wrote it down here in my notes, 36,775 votes. So that's less votes than the Ontario Libertarian Party had in the last 2 provincial elections. So if the Federal Libertarian Party wants to improve, it should just try and convince everybody that voted Libertarian in the Ontario provincial elections to vote Libertarian for the Federal Party, and already there you would have more votes. But realistically, to justify all this time and all this expense, in my mind, it should at least get 150,000 votes in the next election. I would settle for 100,000 to at least justify it, but if it has the same thing as the provincial party, just getting like a 10 or 15% increase, I mean, well, I mean, we'll be here for like the next 150 years, you know, trying to effect real change, you know, even with compounding, and I mean, we'll be here for a long time, far too long in my opinion. And, you know, considering that, I think also the Federal Libertarian Party is pretty lucky in that its leader right now, Tim Moen, is I think it's an exceptional leader. I mean, like, I think he's got that right mix between, like, I don't want to say celebrity because it's obviously not a celebrity, but you know, he's had some good moments where he's been able to get some exposure with that famous meme he had going on the internet. He got a lot of interviews out of that. And what's that singer? I really don't watch music, but Neil Diamond, I think he had a really good article. He got a lot of media exposure out of that, and you know, so he's got that star quality, shall we say, and a good mix of also being like a good libertarian and able to articulate his beliefs really well. You know, I think that's really important because, you know, you look at the U.S. libertarians. I mean, Gary Johnson, nothing wrong against the guy, seems like a nice guy, but obviously what a disaster for a leader for them to have that guy run, you know, have him preach libertarianism during the last 2 elections. I mean, I think that was pretty awful for them anyway. So I think we're pretty lucky with the leader there, and despite having an amazing leader, I mean, still, if we don't crack the 100,000, I would say, you know, really do some soul searching and ask ourselves, is being involved politically really worth our time, or is there some other way to spread libertarianism in a better way? You know, one of those ways might be to just be content to influence the other parties. Like I always said, like, if libertarianism becomes successful as an ideology, it's not going to be signaled by the fact that libertarians are all of a sudden going to be started voting into office. More likely than not, we're going to have to gauge success by looking at how much the other parties are pushing forward libertarian policy. So one thing to be optimistic about is that Maxime Bernier almost became the conservative leader for the federal conservatives in Canada. You know, very libertarian platform. You know, eliminate all corporate subsidies. I mean, that's huge right there. I think, you know, and I heard him speak like quite a while back at the Manning conference in Canada, which is like an annual thing for conservatives, and like that is a man that legitimately understands like Austrian economics and whatnot. Like Gary Johnson, nope. No, doesn't understand it. Just from the interviews I've seen, doesn't understand real economics. Well, Maxime Bernier, I truly believe he's actually took the time to study a lot of it and understands it. And he almost became the federal conservative leader. And, you know, the way Justin Trudeau is going, you know, if he would have become the federal conservative leader, he's got a very good shot of becoming prime minister. So, you know, that's very exciting news. So that's something to consider, that maybe for libertarians it's just worth it to go into either the conservative, and you can either go into the Liberal Party. I mean, I know Justin Trudeau has really exploded the deficit, but you know, you got to keep in mind that Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien, they were able to balance the budget. So, and that wasn't that long ago. I'm not sure how many years now, like 15, 20 years, you know. So the Liberal Party is not completely lost, right? You might have some success going into the Liberal Party too. So yeah, that's also something to keep in mind on. And then strategies, you know, for the libertarians going forward from a political perspective is, I think we got to utilize YouTube a lot more. I just went on the YouTube channel for the Ontario Party, and it has a few videos there, but none of them managed to crack 1,000 views. So I'm not sure how much your budget is, how much money they're spending, but maybe just spending a little on production value, or try to recruit somebody. Like, I don't know how to do YouTube videos at all. I'm just trying to learn right now. But, you know, trying to recruit somebody that really knows how to edit and do all that stuff. Basically, I mean, you're going to need a moment or something that goes viral, like where Tim's meme about you know, wanting gay couples to be able to grow their own marijuana and protect them with guns or whatnot. You need something like that to go viral if we're going to be successful from a political perspective. And so, yeah, you know, my analysis out of all this, it's like, okay, you know, the only thing we can draw out from this election was that couple of more thousand people decided to vote Libertarian, and people are genuinely disgusted with the system. Like, they voted for this Doug Ford guy, but they're not excited about it. So, you know, wait until the next election provincially, and then federally really try and crack the 100,000. If it doesn't happen, like, really, I think everybody should sit down and figure out, is there somewhere else where we can go and put our money into that's not politics and get a better return? So that's all I wanted to say about that. Thanks for hearing, if you made it to the end of the video, thanks for hearing me ramble on for a little over 18 minutes now. A little over 17 actually, but yeah, and anyway, so I also have a blog, I also have a Twitter, I'm going to put down below in the description. If you have any comments, any suggestions, if you agree or disagree, if you post it in the comment section, I'll try and reply back and we can try and get some dialogue going. So that's it for now, guys. I'll see you next time.